When Lydia moved in, every mirror in the apartment was glued to the wall. Every single one. The landlord said it was to keep things steady, but when she leaned close to the bathroom glass and saw her reflection blink after she did, she felt her stomach twist. That night, the mirrors began humming, a faint, trembling sound like something alive inside the walls. By morning, she found handprints on the inside of the glass. Her size, her shape, but not hers. She told herself it was her imagination until one reflection smiled before she did. And that's when she decided to tear one off. By the second night, Lydia could hear the mirrors breathe. The sound wasn't a trick of pipes or air vents. It was a soft, rhythmic sigh that rose and fell with her heartbeat. When she pressed her ear to the glass, she swore she heard whispers layered under the hum. Her name stretched and folded like something rehearsed too many times. The apartment's temperature shifted with her reflection's mood, warm when she smiled, freezing when she turned away. Her phone screen began reflecting her reflection's grin instead of her own. That was when she covered every mirror she could find. But even under blankets, she felt their attention leaking through. She found the first message the next morning. Someone had written across the fogged bathroom mirror, "Don't look behind you." Lydia's pulse hammered as she stared at the words. There was no steam in the room. She hadn't showered yet. The handwriting was hers, but the curve of the letters felt unfamiliar, more graceful, more deliberate. When she wiped it away, another line appeared beneath it, emerging from the glass itself like veins forming under skin. "We've missed you." She stumbled back, slipping on the cold tile, and for a moment her reflection didn't fall. With her, it only watched. That afternoon, Lydia knocked on her neighbor's door. Marla seemed startled to see her, as if expecting someone else entirely. When Lydia mentioned the mirrors, Marla's face drained of color. She whispered about the previous tenant, a woman who'd covered every mirror and still swore she could see herself moving inside them at night. Marla told her never to touch the glass, never to pull them down. "They don't like being uninvited," she said, eyes darting toward Lydia's reflection in her window. Lydia almost laughed, but her reflection didn't share the moment. It just stared back, grinning wider. That night, Lydia couldn't sleep. The hum from the mirrors grew into a low, rhythmic pulse that filled the apartment like a heartbeat under the floorboards. Shadows moved behind the covered glass, shapes pressing outward as though trying to breathe through the blankets. Finally, unable to take it anymore, Lydia tore the sheet from the largest mirror in her bedroom. The glass seemed to exhale, a cool gust washing over her. Her reflection stared back, unblinking, its smile spreading into something human-shaped but wrong. Then it lifted its hand before she did, and waved. The next morning, Lydia awoke to the sound of her own laughter echoing from the bathroom. The door was ajar, the light inside already on, though she hadn't been there since last night. As she approached, she heard her voice whispering, soft, teasing, playful. When she pushed the door open, her reflection was waiting, one hand resting on the sink, lips curved in a perfect imitation of her smirk. Only it wasn't an echo anymore. It was answering her. "You look better when you smile," it said, though Lydia's lips hadn't moved. The light above flickered, humming in time with the voice until she backed away, too afraid to blink. The voice wouldn't stop. Every time Lydia passed a mirror, she heard fragments, muffled words twisting beneath the hum. At first, it called her name. Then it began finishing her sentences. By noon, it was whispering things she'd never told anyone. Memories of the divorce, the fear she carried since childhood, the things she thought she'd buried deep enough to forget. Her reflection watched her with quiet amusement, tilting its head like an old friend who finally understood. When she covered the mirrors again, the voice moved to her phone screen. Her laptop, the black surface of the kettle. There was nowhere left without her face staring back. "Mich sorry," Nusher down or desperate. Lydia called the landlord. Mr. Halvorsen sounded hesitant when he answered, his tone measured, words deliberate, as if he already knew why she was calling. When she mentioned the mirror speaking, There was a pause on the line long enough to make her think the call had dropped. Finally, his voice came through, thin and shaking. "You should have left them alone. They're anchors. They keep what's behind them where it belongs." The phone line went dead, leaving Lydia staring at her reflection in the black screen. For a heartbeat, it wasn't her face looking back. It was his. That evening, the mirrors began to change. The walls hummed with pressure, as if the glass were filled with ocean water pushing to get through. Lydia's reflection no longer copied her movements. It wandered freely within the mirrored world, examining her apartment from the other side. When Lydia turned away, it lingered, bending close to the glass, pressing its palm against the surface until faint cracks webbed under its touch. Then, without warning, it whispered her name, not from the reflection, but from behind her. The sound came from the room itself. She spun around. No one was there. That night, Lydia dreamed she was standing inside her reflection's world. Everything shimmered backward, the apartment reversed, the air cold and thick like syrup. The reflection greeted her with a warm smile, reaching out gently. When Lydia took her hand, it felt solid, human, even comforting. Then the reflection leaned in and whispered, "You've been here before." Lydia woke, gasping, sweat-soaked, staring at the ceiling. But her reflection in the full-length mirror was still standing, head tilted, lips moving silently. And when she turned on the light, the reflection didn't fade. It only smiled wider and waved her closer. Lydia stopped sleeping after that night. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of air from the vents sounded like laughter from inside the mirrors. The reflection no longer mimicked her. It studied her, curious, patient, almost affectionate. Desperate for answers, she scoured the apartment for clues, tearing through old drawers and peeling back wallpaper. In the living room, behind a heavy wall mirror, she found something hidden. A yellowed photograph of a woman who looked exactly like her, standing in the same apartment decades earlier. The woman's eyes were kind, but her smile was the same one the reflection wore now. Lydia traced the photo to the city archives. The woman's name was Eleanor Crane, a tenant who vanished in 1968. Her neighbors reported strange noises, mirrors cracking on their own, and lights flickering before she disappeared. Lydia stared at the grainy microfilm photo, her heart pounding. Same eyes, same hair, same faint scar above the left brow. It wasn't coincidence, it was lineage, or repetition. As she looked deeper, she found more names. Every 20 years, a woman matching her description had lived there. Each vanished, each last seen in front of a mirror. Lydia realized she wasn't the first. She was next. When she returned home, every mirror had changed. The reflections no longer showed her apartment. They showed others. Rooms from decades past, faces pressed against the glass, reaching, mouthing silent screams. The hum was louder now, a low drone vibrating through her chest. Lydia's reflection was gone, replaced by hundreds of others staring from behind fractured panes. She recognized them all from the archives. The missing women. One face pressed close, whispering through the glass, "She's almost done." Lydia backed away, trembling. In the farthest mirror, her reflection returned, smiling, blood dripping from its lips. She ran to Marla's apartment, pounding the door until it opened. Marla pulled her inside, panic in her eyes. The older woman confessed she'd heard the mirrors at night too. Heard the voices, the crying. She told Lydia she'd seen the same woman in her dreams, the one with the smile. Marla showed her a mirror she'd covered long ago, hidden beneath a black cloth in her bedroom. "If you see her," she whispered, "don't answer." But Lydia, trembling, lifted the cloth anyway. The reflection that stared back wasn't hers. It was Marla's, but grinning with Lydia's mouth. That night, Lydia barricaded her apartment door. She sat on the floor, surrounded by mirrors, each one covered, humming softly beneath the blankets like a living heart. She tried to destroy them, but the hammer wouldn't break the glass. It only cracked her reflection's face, which bled like flesh. She screamed, dropping the tool. The reflection looked at her through fractured shards, its smile trembling with something almost tender. "It's not breaking," it whispered. "It's opening." The cracks widened, pulsing with dim light, and from the fissures came the first wet sound of something crawling through. The night bled into dawn, but Lydia didn't notice. The mirrors were alive now, their surfaces pulsing like lungs, drawing shallow breaths. Every reflective thing in the apartment, metal, glass, even her phone screen, showed her reflection moving freely, whispering through distorted lips. "You've seen enough," it said. "Now come back." Lydia pressed her palms to her ears, but the voice spoke inside her mind, gentle and persuasive. "You belong with us." The humming grew into a low chorus, dozens of voices layered beneath her own. Her reflection placed its hand against the glass. The sound of her heartbeat echoed back, one pulse behind. Lydia fled to the hallway, barefoot and trembling, pounding on Marla's door. But no one answered. The hallway lights flickered, buzzing faintly, their glow casting warped reflections in the brass doorknobs. In each one, she saw herself standing still, watching. She ran to the stairwell, only to find every floor below swallowed in darkness. The mirrors on the walls, those decorative things she'd never noticed before, now showed something else. A room submerged in water, shadows moving beneath the surface. From deep below, a pale face turned upward, smiling through the ripples. Lydia stepped back, whispering, "Not you." The reflection whispered back, "Not yet." When Lydia returned to her apartment, the air felt thicker, humid, charged. Every mirror was bare now. She hadn't uncovered them. They'd done it themselves. Her reflection stood waiting in the center of the largest mirror, no longer bound by her movements. "I'm tired of waiting," it said softly, voice echoing from everywhere. Lydia whispered, "What are you?" The reflection tilted its head, smile soft and human. "I'm what's left of us," it said. "All of us who looked too long." Then it reached forward, and the glass rippled like water. Lydia stumbled backward as the mirror exhaled a breath colder than death. The whispers grew into screams. The voices in the mirrors pressed together, chanting words Lydia couldn't understand. Her reflection's expression twisted, not smiling now, but yearning. "It hurts to stay there," it said, pressing both palms against the glass. The apartment trembled. The walls began to weep dark liquid from behind the mirrors, dripping onto the floor. Lydia felt something pull at her chest, a magnetic force drawing her closer. The glass trembled violently, distorting her image. Her reflection leaned forward, eyes glistening. "Let me out," it begged. "Or you'll take my place," Lydia screamed, but her feet began to move on their own. The moment she touched the mirror, the world inverted. The apartment flipped inside out, walls bending, light pouring backward. Lydia found herself standing in the mirrored world, her reflection's domain. Everything was backward, silent, and submerged in a thin, freezing mist. Her reflection stood on the other side now, outside the glass, smiling with relief. Lydia screamed soundlessly, her voice lost in the heavy air. Her reflection whispered through the barrier, "You'll understand soon." Then it turned, stepped away, and walked into her world, leaving Lydia behind the glass, pounding silently as her breath fogged the inside. She watched herself walk away, smiling. Time didn't exist in the mirrored world. Lydia wandered through frozen reflections of her apartment, furniture shimmering like glass sculptures, walls breathing faintly, as though alive. Every sound was muted, like she moved underwater. Her own reflection no longer looked back. Instead, the mirror showed glimpses of her double living her life, laughing on the phone, eating breakfast, pretending to be her. Lydia screamed until her throat tore, but no sound escaped. Then she saw others, dozens of women, all trapped like her, pounding on invisible walls that would never break. Their faces were hers. Their mouths formed one word: run. Lydia followed the voices deeper into the mirrored landscape. The reflections of rooms stretched endlessly. Copies of copies, all trembling with faint whispers. She found a door at the end of a corridor that didn't exist in her world, carved from black glass. Behind it, she heard a woman crying softly. When she opened it, the sound stopped. A single mirror hung on the far wall, and inside it stood the original reflection. Eleanor Crane, smiling with hollow eyes. "You kept the cycle alive," Eleanor whispered. "Every time one of us escapes, another must stay. Balance must hold." The mirror began to ripple again. Whoa! Eleanor approached slowly, her movements fluid, her voice soft as wind. "We were the first," she whispered. "We look too long." The mirror remembers. Lydia stumbled back, shaking her head, but the air thickened, holding her in place. Eleanor lifted a trembling hand, touching Lydia's cheek through the shifting air. "She won't last out there," she murmured. "None of them do." Lydia glanced over her shoulder, and through the haze she saw her double, her, on the other side of the mirror, laughing, living, eyes glinting with something cruel. "Then we'll take it back," Lydia said. Eleanor only smiled. That's what she said too. Lydia pressed her hands against the glass wall, separating her from her double, screaming silently. The reflection on the outside paused mid-motion, looking straight into Lydia's eyes with dawning amusement. It leaned close and whispered something she couldn't hear, but she read the lips perfectly. "You opened it." The glass beneath Lydia's palms began to melt, sticky and warm like flesh. A hand burst through from the other side, hers but not hers, and clamped around her wrist. She felt her bones grind as it pulled. Around her, the other trapped women screamed soundlessly as cracks split the mirrored world apart. When the glass finally shattered, Lydia was thrown backward into the real world. She gasped, lungs burning, the air thick with the scent of dust and cold metal. The apartment was silent. Every mirror lay shattered, each shard pulsing faintly with light. For a moment, she thought she was free. Then she saw her reflection in one fragment on the floor. It was still smiling, though she wasn't. The smile widened slowly, impossibly. Lydia reached to cover it, but the shard moved on its own, tilting to face her. From its surface came her own voice, whispering, "You're still inside?" For a few days, Lydia's double lived seamlessly in her world. It smiled at neighbors, paid bills, and went to work wearing her face. But something felt wrong to those around her. They said she was different now. Too still, too perfect. Her eyes gleamed like polished glass, unblinking in conversation. Meanwhile, the real Lydia washed from the mirrored void, pressed against the inner walls of every reflection, screaming silently as her doppelganger thrived. She tried to claw through, but each attempt only rippled the glass. On the other side, her double sometimes paused mid-movement, tilting her head as though listening to the faint echo of a ghost. Inside the mirror world, Lydia grew weaker. Every time her double looked into a mirror, Lydia felt energy drained from her bones. She screamed to warn the others, the dozens of women trapped with her. But their voices were fading, their faces dissolving into the silver mist. She stumbled through the fractured corridors, calling for Eleanor, but only heard whispers of laughter. Then, in one corner of the mirrored void, she found a small, untouched shard glowing with warmth. It reflected not her apartment, but a place she'd never seen. A cracked basement door dripping with water. A way out, or another trap. When Lydia touched the shard, everything shifted. The mirrored floor liquefied, dragging her downward through freezing darkness. She emerged gasping, landing in a small, decaying basement lined with mirrors. Each one held reflections that didn't match her movements. Women staring back, whispering warnings in silence. The walls dripped with black water, and the air smelled like rust and mold. In the far corner, something moved. A figure hunched over, hair matted and long. Lydia called out, her voice trembling. The figure looked up. It was Marla, but her eyes were mirrors. "You shouldn't have come here," Marla said softly. "They'll see you now." Marla told her the truth. The mirrors weren't gateways. They were prisons. Each reflection stolen had to be replaced, and Lydia's double was feeding on her life to stay real. "They always think they can escape," Marla whispered, "but the world only needs one of you." Lydia refused to accept it. She clawed at the walls, screaming for release, but the glass absorbed her sound. Marla reached out, her mirrored eyes glinting. "There's one way," she said. "Break the balance." Before Lydia could ask, Marla slammed her palm into a mirror, cracking it open. The sound was deafening, like bones shattering underwater. When the mirrors shattered, Lydia felt herself being pulled apart, half of her dragged toward the real world, half sinking deeper into the mirrored abyss. The reflections screamed, their faces distorting, their mouths forming her name. She saw her double collapse in the real world, glass shards cutting her skin as the mirror behind her imploded. Lydia reached through the last surviving shard, her fingertips brushing her own. For one brief moment, she felt warmth. Then the light flickered out. The reflection stood, breathing heavily, looking at her hands as if uncertain which side they belonged to anymore. Morning light spilled across Lydia's apartment, soft and pale. The mirrors were gone, shattered, stripped, their frames empty like open mouths. Lydia sat on the edge of her bed, breathing slowly. Her skin was warm again, her heartbeat steady, but her reflection, what little of it survived in broken glass, looked different. The face staring back had her eyes, her hair, her scars, but there was something colder behind the smile, something rehearsed. She tried to remember how she'd escaped, but the memory blurred like condensation. Somewhere deep inside the mirror dust, faint whispers echoed, 100 voices humming, one word in unison. "Stay." The landlord came that afternoon. Mr. Halvorsen stepped inside quietly, eyes scanning the damage, hands trembling as they had before. "You shouldn't have touched them," he murmured. Lydia didn't answer. She only smiled. He stopped mid-sentence, his watery blue eyes narrowing as he caught the reflection in a shard near her foot. In the broken glass, she wasn't smiling at all. "You're not her," he whispered. Lydia tilted her head, studying him like a curious insect. "I am now," she said softly. The air turned cold enough to mist his breath, and behind her, one of the shards began to hum again. That night, Lydia sat in front of her vanity, brushing her hair methodically. 100 strokes, each perfect, each slow. The mirror had been replaced. She'd installed it herself, bolting it tightly to the wall. When she leaned closer, her reflection smiled at the same time she did. Perfect, balanced. But as she set down the brush, a faint tap came from the other side of the glass. Then another. She froze, breath catching. A voice, faint but distinct, whispered from within, "Please, let me out." Lydia stared, her smile trembling for the first time. "Not yet," she whispered. "Not yet." Days passed, and the world accepted her. Lydia laughed with coworkers, visited Marla's empty apartment, and smiled at her reflection every morning. But at night, she dreamed of glass corridors, of her own pale face banging against the invisible wall, screaming to be heard. Sometimes, when she walked past a dark window, her reflection lagged a beat behind. Sometimes it whispered things she didn't remember knowing, and sometimes when she closed her eyes, she could still feel the mirror's cold breath against her skin. The smile she wore grew easier every day, because the longer she kept it, the less she had to pretend. In the final weeks, the mirror's hum returned. Quiet, rhythmic, patient. Lydia didn't flinch this time. She sat before it, fingers tracing the faint pulse beneath the glass. Her reflection smiled, perfect and poised. From within, A faint silhouette moved. Her old self, eyes hollow, mouth open in an eternal scream. "It's quieter now," the reflection whispered. Lydia nodded slowly. "I know." Outside, thunder rolled across the city, echoing like a heartbeat. As lightning flashed, the mirror's surface rippled once more, and for a heartbeat, two Lydias stared at each other. One trapped, one free, and both smiling the same smile.